Chapter 8. Joe and the Magic Snowman. Moonface was most upset to see Joe disappear. "I told him not to go, I told him," he groaned. "You didn't," sobbed Fanny. "Your mouth was so full of toffee, all you could say was mmm. And how could we know what that meant?" "Where's Joe now?" asked Bessie, quite pale with shock. Yes, indeed, where was Joe? Someone had lifted him right off the ladder, up into the land of ice and snow, and there, strangely enough, the moon and the sun were both in the sky at the same time, one at one side and the other at the opposite, both shining with pale light. Joe shivered, for it was very cold. He looked to see what had lifted him off the ladder, and he saw in front of him a big, strange creature, a snowman. He was just like the snowmen Joe had built many times in the winter, round and fat and white, with an old hat on his head and a pipe in his mouth. "This is luck," said the snowman, in a soft, snowy sort of voice. "I've been standing by that hole for days waiting for a seal to come up, and you came." "Oh," said Joe, remembering the seals come up to breathe through holes in the ice. "That wasn't a water hole. That was a hole that led down to the faraway tree. I want to go back, please." "The hole has closed up," said the snowman. Joe looked, and to his great dismay, he saw that a thick layer of ice had formed over the hole, so thick that he knew perfectly well he could never break through it. "Whatever shall I do?" he asked. "Just wait, just what I tell you," said the snowman, with a grin. This is splendid in this dull and silent land. There is nothing but polar bears, seals, and penguins. I have often wanted someone to talk to." "How did you get here?" asked Joe, wrapping his coat firmly around him, for he was bitterly cold. "Ah," said the snowman, "that's a long story. I was made by some children long ago, and when they had finished me, they laughed at me, and they threw stones at me to break me up. So that night I crept away here and made myself king. But what's the good of being a king if you only have bears and things to talk to? What I want is a jolly good servant who can talk my language, and now you've come." "But I don't want to be your servant," said Joe, I can't even say that word. "But I don't want to be your servant," said Joe. "Nonsense," said the snowman, and he gave Joe a push that nearly sent him over. Then, one big flat snow feet, he moved forward to where there was a low wall of snow. "Make me a good house," he said. "I don't know how to," said Joe. "Oh, just cut blocks off this stiff, icy snow, and build them on top of each other," said the snowman. "When you've finished, I'll give you a fur coat to wear. Then you won't shiver so much." Joe didn't see what he could do anything but obey. So he picked up the spade that was lying on the wall and began to cut big bricks from the frozen snow. When he had cut about 20, he stopped and placed them on top of each other. Still one side of the round house was made. Then he began to cut snow bricks again, wondering all the time how in the world he could ever be able to escape from this strange land. Joe had often built little snow houses of soft snow in his garden at home during the winter. Now he's making a big one, with proper snow blocks as hard as bricks. He quite enjoyed it, though he did wish the girls were here too. When he had finished it and made a nice round roof, the snowman came shuffling up. "Very nice," he said. "Very nice indeed. I can just get in, I think." He squeezed his big snowy body inside, threw out a fur coat for Joe, made of white polar bear skin. Joe put it on very thankfully. Then he tried to squeeze in after the snowman, for he wanted to be out of the cold and the icy wind. But he was so squashed between the snowman and the walls of the snow house he couldn't breathe. "Don't push so," said the snowman, disagreeable. "Move up." "I can't," gasped Joe. He felt quite certain that he would be pushed right out of the snow hut through the hole in the wall. Just then there came a curious grunt at the door. The snowman called out at once, "Is that you, Furry? Take this boy to your house, under the ice. He's a nuisance here. He keeps squashing me." Joe looked up to see who Furry was, and he saw a great white bear looking in. The bear had a stupid but kind look on its face. "Ooh," said the bear, and pulled Joe out into the open air. Joe knew it was no use to struggle. Nobody could get away from a bear as big as that. But the bear was certainly kindly. "Ooh," he said to Joe, with a loud grunting noise. "I don't know what you mean," said Joe. The bear said no more. He just took Joe along with him, half carrying the little boy, for Joe found that it was very slippery indeed. They came to a hole that led under the ice and snow, and the bear pushed Joe down it. And to Joe's enormous surprise, he found that there was a big room underneath, with 5 bears there, big and little. It was quite warm there too. Joe was astonished, for there was no fire, of course. Said all the bears politely. Said Joe. That pleased the bears very much indeed. They came and shook paws with Joe very solemnly, and all over him. Joe liked the bears. Joe liked the look of the bears much more than he liked the look of the snowman. He thought perhaps they might help him escape from this silly land of ice and snow. "Could you tell me the way back to the faraway tree?" he asked the bears politely and clearly. The bears looked at one another, and then at Joe. It was quite clear that they didn't understand a word he said. "Never mind," said Joe with a sigh, and made up his mind to put up with things till he could see a way to escape. The snowman was a great nuisance. No sooner did Joe settle himself down for a nap, leaning his head against the big warm body of a bear. Then came a call from the snow house. "Hey, boy, come here now and play dominoes with me." So Joe had to go and play dominoes. And as the snowman wouldn't let him into the hut, 'cause he said he was being squashed, Joe had to sit at the doorway and play, and he nearly froze to bits. Then another time Joe was eating a nice bit of fried fish, that one of the bears had kindly cooked in oil for him. The snowman shouted to him to come and make him a window in his house, and Joe had to hurry off and cut a sheet of clear ice to fit in the side of the house for a window. Really, that snowman was a perfect nuisance. I wish to goodness I'd never peeped into this silly land, thought Joe 100 times. It's a good thing the bears are so nice to me. I only wish they could say something else besides Joe wondered what Bessie and Fanny were doing. Were they very upset when he didn't come back. Would they go home and tell their father and mother of what had happened? Bessie and Fanny were upset. They were in a great fright too. It had been dreadful to see poor Joe disappear through the cloud like that. Moonface looked very solemn too. He could speak quite well now, and he had swallowed all his toffee. "We must rescue him," he said, his face shining like the full moon. "How?" asked the girls. "I must think," said Moonface, and he shut his eyes. His head swelled up with his thinking. He opened his eyes and then nodded his head. "We'll go to Goldilocks and the 3 bears," he said. "Her bears know the bears in the land of ice and snow, and she might be able to help us to get Joe that way." "But where does Goldilocks live?" asked Bessie, in wonder. "I thought she was just a fairy tale." "Good gracious, no," said Moonface. "Come on, we'll have to catch the train." "What train?" asked Fanny, in astonishment. "Oh, wait and see," said Moonface. "Hurry now, go down the slippery slip, and wait for me at the bottom."